Hello, my name is Arthur, and in the last video we had left off with the idea of looking at how to render the four still images to get the player turning in the four directions. Instead of doing that, let's get straight to rendering the entire animation images. By now we need to have a walk cycle. I don't want to demonstrate how to make a Blender walk cycle. There's many tutorials for that online, so that would just be me showing how to do it, not as good as other people can show you how to do it. Let's look at the setup first. It's no different than in the tree tutorial. For renders, we're using cycles. We have transparent in film is checkmarked so that we can render a transparent background. The resolution is 128 by 128. I've selected an output folder and I've created a series of 8 folders for the 8 different directions that will be made in the end. So I have it into the south facing folder. For the camera, again, the setup is exactly the same as the tree. It's centered along the x-axis. That's the axis we cannot see. As well, the character is centered on the x-axis, and the character is centered on the z-axis. And that's a part of the animation that we want to pay attention to. We don't want them bouncing around. We don't want them going back and forth or side to side along the axis. He needs to be staying centered more or less in the camera frame. The sun is set up to have more or less the same lighting as the other assets in this series. So it will have the same shading on the same side of the character as the other assets, like the tree. The other thing I did for the sun is I elevated it quite a bit. And for the plane, the lighting plane underneath the character, it has been converted from just a light reflector. So it will now show in renders, except it will only show as a shadow catcher. So that means that the player will cast a shadow in the image. So when the player is centered in the frame, and let's select the camera so we can see the camera frame. When the player is centered in the frame, we want to rotate through the different directions and cycle through the animation a bit. Let's turn off that viewport shading so we can see a little quicker. We want him centered in the frame so that he stays in the frame and his shadow stays in the frame, which you do need the shading to be able to see the shadow. Now I've already got him centered. So this is one of the directions. This would be something like northeast. Let's see, the only other detail, I think I already mentioned that the camera is tilted down it's tilted up by 60, which is down by the 30 degrees most isometric documentation we'll talk about. So let's have a quick look at the actual walk cycle. So we'll select his rigging, go into pose mode. And it's best if you have a little knowledge of Blender. Like, I wouldn't expect to be able to do this from zero knowledge in Blender. So that's kind of a prerequisite here. So this is my walk cycle. It's pretty dumbed down. I basically made it out of 2 poses. So with those 2 poses, they're then copied and pasted, flipped, and then back to the original pose. For what we need from the animation, we need this frame. We will not need this frame. And then we'll need from 3 to 10. So there'll be 9 images that we use and 1 image rendered that we do not use. This does not need to be used because the frame exists twice in the animation. And it's not used in the walk cycle inside of Godot because it would cause a stutter in the walk cycle. So to get the walk cycle to work in as a sprite strip, another thing we need to do is we need to select the entire rigging, select all of our key points, right click, and change the interpolation mode. It needs to be set to linear. By default, it will always be Bezier, and the Bezier curve will cause the animation to sort of speed up in the middle and slow down at the ends. So it'll turn what should be a circle into an egg, more or less. And it won't look very good. And that's basically everything that you need to know. Let's go into object mode. I hope that's everything you need to know. We're going to select the camera, control the sun. So we'll select the camera in the sun. The player is on the z-axis, the cursor is on the origin, and our transform pivot point is set to 3D cursor. Now, because he has a walk cycle, we can't rotate the player, so we're going to rotate the world around the player, which is the sun and the camera. So we'll rotate Z 45, enter. So that's more or less the start position for the first 4 directions. To do the other 8 directions, you put the you take away that 45 degree offset because the original position is one of the 8. So from there, we're ready to render. Now, I've already rendered the images with him facing in the southward direction, and I've decided to change what I'm considered north and south in my script already. And my thinking was that this is up on my keypad, and up should be north. So I've changed up and down on the D-pad to north and south, and left and right to east and west. So from there, we have our output set to our folder. We just render and render animation. So that's pretty much all you need to know to get your 8 PNG files or your 9 PNG files. So let's save that, and we'll close it down, and we'll jump into GIMP to look at how to make the actual image. So we open our image software. Let's look at a calculator. We have 9 times 128, the resolution. So the number of frames times the resolution equals 1152. Now, we could do the math all the way and start off with the sheet that we need. So that would be 128 times 8 strips. So there would be 8 directional strips of 1152. So our entire image size would be 1152 by 1024 to fit in all 8 of the motion strips. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to demonstrate with the one direction. So we'll just create an image with the one strip. And I've already made this strip for the sake of time. So that's what it looked like with one strip, whether it's the 1 or the 8. Everything's all the same. So we're going to snap to grid, show grid, configure grid. And this time we want it for the image size that we output from Blender, so 128. So these are the frames in the animation. We'll use box select to select the first frame. Then we can open the folder that we saved the images to. So we'll select all of them, open them, they'll open as tabs. Now we know that we don't need the second image in the sequence, so we'll just close that right away. We'll go to the first image, Control A to select all, Control C to copy, and Control V to paste. And that'll paste directly centered in the frame. We have to anchor the layer to make the next selection, so it doesn't exclude this. I like to close down the images as I'm copying, or after I've pasted them into the new image. I'm not sure what happened there, but something went wrong. Oh. Yeah, that's what I need. Control all, Control copy, Control paste. So we just repeat that process through the 9 images until we have each image pasted into its appropriate frame spacing. And once we've done that, the image will look like this. So that's the strip finished. So in the next video, we'll have this strip saved exported into Godot, and we'll have a look at how to get the animation working. So until then, take care.